With the release of Fallout London, a lot of people like myself have probably found themselves in the equivalent of their 2-week Minecraft phase, but with Fallout. I love Fallout London, and honestly, it's the only game I'm playing other than Rimworld at the moment. So when I saw this mod come out, I thought, great, this is perfect for any Fallout playthrough I do with Rimworld, and honestly, it just gives me that extra bit of Fallout that I'm looking for. Introducing the RATS mod, the RimTech Assisted Targeting System mod, which is pretty much VATS, but for Rimworld. Now let's get into things and start with the content. So let's start with the content at the Steam Workshop page. What is there and what do we see? So we start off with the thumbnail here. I think this is really nice and fits really nicely within the Fallout theming that we've clearly got going on here. And very interesting, there is a video that shows off this mod as well, which I think is really important, especially for this mod, which we'll see further in this video as to why I think this is important. Looking into the rest of the content here, it's alright, you know, we've got a nice description and stuff, we've got recommendations, it explains everything and how it works. I would definitely like to see some pictures and stuff, and definitely I'd love to see some shifts and things like that, showing what it actually looks like in-game when we use the RATS system. So what does the RATS system actually look like in game? Well, here it is, and funnily enough, it looks very suspiciously similar to a gun link. And if I click on this, it is a gun link. Looking at the RATS system, it is basically just a retextured gun link that has different properties. Nothing wrong with that, and I get that it's hard to implement a object like the VATS system into Rimworld, but I would maybe like to see a little unique design here. So when we equip the RATS object to a colonist, what we do is we get access to the RATS system. The exact same way it works with VATS, where we get to select a body part and we get to shoot it. So here I have a colonist, they've got an assault rifle, and what we're going to be doing is aiming at some colonists and aiming at a specific body part. So what happens is we click on the colonist that we're going to be aiming at, and the RATS system comes up. We have an individual picture of the colonist that we're aiming at. We're having a little bit of a branding of the RATS system as well. A really intuitive design here, and I really like the way this fits in with Rimworld. It does kind of look base game, actually. I think this fits really well. But what you'll notice here is that every single percentage is at 1%. Now this is something we will be touching on later in this video because it's an issue that is reoccurring. Once we get over the fact that there is a 1% aim chance and I redo some things and I retry, it then comes up with the true amount. At 23% here for certain body parts, we aim on it and it shoots this body part depending on the chance there is to hit. Really nice feature, especially from when we're trying to get just a colonist to go down so we can capture them and do what we want with them. What I think is as well is a really cool feature with this mod is where the RATS branding has been implemented within Rimworld. It's not just accessible through the RATS headset. We also have access to with it if we have a colonist with 2 bionic eyes, a colonist with full recon armor, and the charge lance comes defaulted with the ability to use RATS, which I think is amazing. It implements it into base game vanilla Rimworld, and for lore and everything, that's really nice. I do appreciate that small touch. So how are we going to be able to make ourselves a RATS headset in game? Now we're going to be able to access through the fabrication bench with a reasonably costed recipe. And in terms of research, RATS is accessed after we get fabrication, and it is the exact same resource cost as Gunlink. Now very interestingly, this mod adds a barrier to entry for accessing RATS, as you have to have RATS researched in order to access it. So you can't just buy recon armor and have access to it. You can't just buy charge lance and have access to it. You need to have done the research as a prerequisite in order to use the technology, which I think is great. So that's going to be it for the content section here, and for me, this mod is like Goldilocks from the Three Bears. This porridge is perfect. It's not too hot, it's not too cold, it's not too sweet, and it's not too salty. It's just right. The amount of content that's been provided here, it fits in really well with base game vanilla Rimworld. It's been implemented in such a way that it makes things lore accurate, and I love the way that it's not just one way that we're going to be accessing the RATS system. It's going to be through the recon armor, and we can use it through the charge lance, and we can use it through bionic eyes, which I think is really good. The whole way that this mod has been implemented is not only unique and sophisticated, it makes sense, and it's a mod that I can definitely see being used in very vanilla playthroughs because it does feel pretty vanilla if you ask me. So in terms of content, I think arguably we could see different versions of the RATS systems. We could have maybe like a prototype system that's slightly worse, that's accessed at an earlier tech level. We could see an Archotech version of the RATS system that adds extra accuracy bonuses and damage bonuses potentially. We have got potential for improvements and more development, but why spoil perfection? What we've got here is really, really good, and we could just see improvements in the Steam Workshop page and potentially adding a little bit more if you really wanted to. So for content here, I'm going to be giving it a 9 out of 10. So next, let's move on and look at the quality of the item added by this mod. Now, because there is only one item added by this mod, I am generally expecting high quality here. I'm expecting a lot of love and care to be put into this. I'm expecting things to look good. Now, zooming in on the gun link, rats link, whatever you want to call it, it looks alright. It looks like a gun link. We have a couple of different other colours that I was able to spawn in, but ultimately it just looks like a gun link, which is a little bit boring. What I think would be a really cool implementation here is like with the recon armor where there's a very obvious like visor, maybe we could have that instead. Maybe have it as a helmet and then have it as a visor that comes down over people's faces. Make it so it's like that, so we have just a little bit more of an interesting look about it and it's a little bit more unique. Obviously I get for the bionic eyes and everything, it makes sense, and with the charge lance I think that also makes sense, but then the gun link itself just the rats link, sorry, see, I'm even getting confused. It's just a bit basic and I would like to see something different here, honestly. So next, let's move on to the actual rats system itself and when we actually aim at a colonist's body parts. And honestly, for me, this is the exact way I'd expect VATS to be implemented in Rimworld. In my mind, if I was going to have not seen this mod beforehand, this is exactly how I describe it, which I think is extremely important for the way this mod works. Everything looks exactly how expected. Obviously, there are some graphical issues here because we are using just base game vanilla colonists. I'd imagine if you used modded colonists and zoomed in on them and added them to this bit, they'd look a lot better. I think another thing that we could definitely have implemented is the text to be a little bit larger and maybe have a different color background so it pops a little bit more. But I mean, that's just me. I still really, really like this. So that's going to be it for the quality section. And generally speaking, I'm a little bit mixed on how I feel about the quality of this mod. Whilst I do appreciate the actual system that's in place, I love the way it looks when we're targeting a colonist. I think that's really, really good. I think it's great. But I would definitely love to see a different graphic design other than the gun link. I get it, it makes sense, kinda, and within the lore and everything, then yeah, I guess it works. But I think we need just a little bit of a difference, just add a few more bits and pieces to it so we can tell it isn't a gun link, because yeah, they look exactly the same. So for quality here, I like what's here. It's not necessarily the most important that it's the same as a gun link. I would like it to be different though. So I'm going to be giving the quality section here a 6 out of 10. So next, let's move on and look at the balancing of the item added by this mod. Now, generally speaking, my expectations here are when we go into the rats system, same as with VATS, what I'm expecting here is the percentage values to be accurate and I'm expecting them to work and I'm expecting them to not necessarily be 100% or whatever. And I'm expecting distance and things like that to be all taken into account. Really, I'm expecting a lot, honestly, especially basing this off the VATS system. So let's get into things and start by looking at the percentage values of the accuracy when we're in the rats system. So what we're going to be doing to test the accuracy values here to see whether they're accurate or not is I've set up a little scenario here. Here I have 5 colonists. All of them will have got different shooting, starting from 0, going up in 5s, all the way up to 20. They will all have access to a good quality assault rifle, and what we're going to do is use the rat system to aim at colonists at 11 blocks distance, 21 blocks distance, and 31 cells, blocks, whatever you want to call it, distance as well, because this will go up to the maximum range of the rats system. So the general expectation here is that every time that we have a colonist further away and closer, that the accuracy values are going to change, especially bearing in mind when all these different colonists have got different accuracy values and different gun skill. So let's get into things and see how things went. So starting with the first colonist that has got 0 shooting, and at every single different range, using the rat system, it was at 0% accuracy, and I started this off and I thought, yeah, you know what, that actually makes sense. Fully appreciate that. I moved on to the colonist with 5 shooting. Once again, it was 0%, 1%, all over, and this trend followed for every single colonist. Apart from the 20 shooting colonist had a 7% chance to hit at the closest range. So initially I thought that this was going to be an issue with range. I assumed that like with the VATS system, maybe it's very range dependent and I need my colonists to be real close. So I redid the test. I moved all the victim colonists forward to see how the accuracy changed. I have a colonist at 3 cells apart, 6 cells apart, and then I have 9. So all of them are less than the lowest distance than the previous test. And what did I find? The first colonist had a 0% to hit. Once again, I was a little bit more confused because I was like, well, that's right in front of you. You shouldn't be missing. And then the rest of them followed suit the exact same way. I was bemused. I was baffled. I was confuddled. I didn't understand what was going on, so I did some experimentation. So what I noticed with my experimentation was that once I'd gotten a colonist actually use the rat system once and used them one time to fire a bullet, it then kind of turned it on and activated it. Once I did this, all the accuracy values were kind of anywhere from like the mid 30s to the early 40s, apart from one colonist that I couldn't seem to get it to work for. This is the only time that I could get the accuracy values to be somewhat accurate and make sense. This was a huge letdown for me. Now, for balancing purposes, I think roughly 40% as being hit chance isn't too bad at all. It means you're not going to be able to abuse this, and when it did hit, it hit the actual body part and did a decent amount of damage as if it was one bullet that hit. That all made sense, and I think in that regard, it was balanced. But to make it work, holy moly, God, it was a lot of effort. I'm going to assume that, you know, if you've got a really, really good gun, then yeah, it'll be pretty overpowered or not overpowered. But honestly, by the time I'd figured out how to get things to work, I was pretty done with this mod. So with the rats system not really working, I wanted the rest of the balancing here to be perfect. Otherwise, I'd be pretty pissed off. So looking at the resource cost, we have 40 steel, 20 plus steel, 4 components, and 2 advanced components with a minimum crafting skill of 6. For me, I think this is perfect. I don't think this could be balanced any better in terms of the resource cost. It all makes sense. It's more expensive than a gun link, but it's still not so expensive that you're not going to have access to it. It's something that in the late game, you're going to be able to have several colonists wearing one of these. For me, perfect. I could potentially see an argument for the minimum crafting skill to be maybe 10, just because you're going to be at that stage of the game, and I think that's just kind of a barrier to entry for if you're accessing these too early in your playthroughs. Then looking at the tech cost, I think having the prerequisite of fabrication makes perfect sense, and I think having a 2,000 research cost also makes perfect sense. I don't necessarily agree with having this at the same level as a gun link, because I think the rats system, depending on your colonist and what weapons they've got, is significantly better in my opinion. I could potentially see the argument of having the gun link as a prerequisite for rats, potentially. You could even potentially argue that rats should be accessed through advanced fabrication as kind of the next step up from the gun link. So that's going to be it for the balancing section here, and I think generally speaking, the rats system is very balanced. It all makes sense, and I think it works the way the VATS system works, but within Rimworld, and I do think it fits really, really well. I think the resource cost is perfect. I think this is some of the best resource costing I've seen for an item in Rimworld in a very long time. I think the research cost could potentially be a little bit more, maybe have a prerequisite of gun link or potentially moving up to require advanced fabrication. But generally, I'm really happy with the way that everything works in terms of balancing. It all makes sense, but it's been really overshadowed by how it just didn't really work. And I think we could definitely see some improvements, just to maybe mention in the tech cost for this in the research tab that, hey look, in order to activate this, you need to just shoot it once. Just one of those small little details that I think would have made a huge difference in my experience. But for balancing, I think it is really well balanced. It all makes sense, and just like with the VAT system in Fallout, it makes sense. And I think that is the big thing with this mod, that when it works, it makes sense and it's perfectly balanced. So for balancing, I'm going to be giving it a very solid 8 out of 10. Next, let's move on and look at the compatibility of this mod. Are there any bugs that I need to let you know about, and how this fit in with your playthroughs? Now, in terms of looking at the Steam Workshop page, a few people did report some issues not being able to access rats in certain situations, but you need to remember that you have to have the prerequisite of the tech actually done before you can use it with a charged lance, recon armor, bionic eyes. And I think you have to also bear in mind that you need to have a weapon equipped in order to access the rats system. Now, in terms of my experience, as we saw within the balancing section, as we saw within the content section, there are issues with this mod in getting it to show the accuracy percentages. It doesn't always work, and honestly, it's not ideal. Yes, I get it that I fixed it by just shooting it once, but if that's a thing that exists, just put it in the research option. Just have a little note saying, please remember to shoot this once to get it to activate. Just, you know, fit it in within the lore and stuff and you'd be absolutely fine. It's a very small thing, but it did affect my experience. It was definitely a bug that I think some players that aren't necessarily with it as much probably wouldn't understand, and they probably would find quite frustrating. But otherwise, everything worked absolutely fine. And how the rat/VAT system work with your playthroughs? Now, funnily enough, I don't think it works within the tribal era, nor in the medieval era. This mod will fit in perfect with kind of a late nuclear era, early sci-fi and architect kind of era for what it's providing. And I think what is really special about this mod is the way that even though it is obviously kind of taken from Fallout, it fits really, really well within Rimworld. And I think with the way that this mod has been implemented, it allows it to feel almost lore accurate. And it fits in really nicely with vanilla Rimworld as a result, which I think is an amazing touch by this mod creator and something they should definitely be commended for. But overall for compatibility, because of the bugs I experienced, it was pretty big for me, honestly, and it did get to me that I couldn't work out what was going wrong. Obviously, I eventually worked out I just had to get it to shoot once, which is a very simple fix, but for some players, they won't get it, and it will be a really frustrating experience for them. So for compatibility, I'm going to be giving it a 5 out of 10, which obviously it's not a good score, but it could be fixed very easily if we just have some clarification on why it wasn't showing the correct accuracy values. Next, let's move on and look at my mod recommendations to go with this mod. Now, obviously, I've kind of alluded all throughout this video that despite this being a very Fallout themed mod, it will fit in with pretty much any kind of vanilla based playthrough. But the mods that I've chosen today are very much Fallout based because I am very much into Fallout at the moment. So starting with the vanilla weapons expanded lasers. This one for me makes perfect sense with all the laser weapons we have in Fallout 4. Next, Fallout Retro Weapon Pack. Very much, once again, Fallout. Next, we have the Fallout Nuka-Cola Collection. Once again, perfect for Fallout sort of playthroughs. Then we have the Ancient Fallout Armory for when we want to roleplay as the pre-war era, and then lastly the Fallout Traits Continued. Now there was a robot mod that I previously used in one of my series that has unfortunately not been updated to 1.5, otherwise I would have included that, and if I see that being updated in the recent future, I will definitely add it in the comment section, because I think that would be an amazing addition as well. Now yes, I have only done things that are Fallout based, but this mod does generally fit in with anything that's kind of vanilla in my opinion. I think this was obviously not necessarily fitting with something that's a little bit more thematically focused. I could also see this working with mechanoids, honestly, especially with the way that the Charge Lance has been kind of made into lore as something that's got the rat system implemented, which is really done this mod a huge favor in my opinion. So for mod recommendations, it doesn't quite fit in with everything, but I think it very uniquely actually works with quite a lot for something that is very thematically themed. So for me, I'm going to be giving this a very solid 7 out of 10. So let's move on and look at my conclusion for this mod. Now, I probably shouldn't have been so surprised at the RATS system working so well in Rimworld, because when we look at the VATS system within Fallout, the whole Fallout is based off a nuclear apocalypse. And obviously in Rimworld, we can just do one of those on a Tuesday. We can bash out a nuclear apocalypse and it means nothing. So the VATS system is just perfect for Rimworld, really. And when we take into account that the mod creators implemented it in such a way that it becomes canon and within lore, it's amazing. I love the way that this mod creator has taken the time and the effort to make things feel like it's right. It feels natural and it feels like it's just part of Rimworld, which is amazing. The way the recon armor, the charge lance, and the bionic eyes all come ready loaded with the RATS system means that it's just seamless in the way we're going to be using it. Now, yes, the bugs here for me are pretty detrimental in my opinion. Yes, the workaround is pretty easy to solve when we know what to do, but I think we need to have clarification of how we solve that until we get an actual fix for that in game. So for content, I gave it 9 out of 10, quality 6 out of 10, balancing 8 out of 10, compatibility 5 out of 10, my mod recommendation score was 7 out of 10, giving it the grand total score of 35 out of 50, which is a very solid B rated mod. So when we look past the pretty big bugs that I experienced, this is an incredibly good mod, and a mod that I'm very happy to recommend to you guys to pick up and chuck into like pretty much any playthrough, honestly, because it fits in so well within that. Now, yes, there are bugs, and it has unfortunately affected my score, and I would love to see some clarification from the mod creator as to whether or not they're planning on fixing this, whether there's a fix for it, or if they want to just maybe add it in the Steam Workshop page or in the actual mod itself in-game as a kind of footer of, hey look, this is how you activate the rat system, you shoot something once. That would be amazing. But don't listen to my opinion, make sure you try out this mod for yourself and give it a go. And if you have liked today's video, consider liking, subscribing, and make sure you tell your mum about me. I'll see you next time. Thank you.